Good morning, everybody, and especially a good morning to Donna. And thank you so much, Donna, for joining us. For those of you who know Donna's work, what I'm about to say is going to be probably resonating with you. And for those of you who are unsure of Donna's work, hopefully this will help. So Donna Ashworth is a Scottish writer extraordinaire. She navigates our thoughts and feelings, darkest worries and secret hopes, and transports them into words that resonates with our very soul. Like an artist, she takes the most complex of emotions and places them into the simplest words that everyone can access. Starting in the pandemic, she reached out to those, post is coming in, excuse me. She reached out to those who felt worn down, anxious, and impotent, and recharged each one with the elixir of poetry that reached into their hearts and minds and told them, thank you, you will be all right. You are enough. You can do this. Hold on to each other and we will all get through this. Trust yourself, and many, many more messages. She showed empathy at a time when the nation was weighed down with uncertainty and fear, when people we loved were dying in isolation, and when we all needed a bit of comfort and reassurance. Getting emotional.
Emotional too, Julie.
The talent to unscramble the cobwebs of long-standing worries in our minds makes Donna Ashworth more than a poet. She transcends that title to one that encapsulates an oasis, a refuge, a sanctuary, and a best friend. She hasn't gone unnoticed, and her work has been read by celebrated actors like Griff Rhys-Jones, Vicky McClure, and Michael Sheen. And we are honoured to invite her here today to share her artistry and talent. We thank you, Donna, for joining you ICPC today. And there's Stuart joined us as well.
Julie, that was absolutely beautiful. You can tell that you're a writer. You got me in the feels. Thank you.
Thank you. And welcome everybody who just joined in. I think probably, unless you're called to ask a question, perhaps keep ourselves on mute, and that way we won't get any like rattling noises, if that's okay with everybody. So once again, thanks, Donna, for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, excellent. We've got lots of questions for you. So is it okay that we start off with that? I don't think Emma has joined us. Is Emma here?
I saw Emma.
I am, yes. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Emma, would you like to start with your question to Donna?
Yes, and actually, I'll be honest. I asked a friend of mine because she buys your books for all of us, all of our friends. I don't know how many of your books she has bought, but she really wants to share your wisdom around. And I think she had two key things that she wanted to ask, and that was kind of really about your frame of mind, when something comes to you. Is there any sort of like a particular sort of like mood or frame of mind that you're in? And also whether you meditate or do mindfulness or anything like that.
I think, in all honesty, I did so much mindfulness work in my teens and 20s when I was really struggling with my mental health, that it has become a way of life, and I don't actually know that I'm doing it anymore. It's become such a base level in my brain that I sort of carry out my whole entire day mindfully. Obviously, I slip off of it like we all do, but my method of writing is not something that I've sort of worked on or even think about. So it's funny to me when people ask me, because I have to be really honest and say it just comes and I write it. And but then I'm constantly working on my thoughts and I'm constantly working on my mood. So am I meditating? Not specifically, but do I sort of hop in and out of meditative states when I'm stressed and anxious? I do, just from having practiced it so much long ago. But the actual writing is not something I sit down to deliberately do. It kind of arrives in a piece, and I take it from there and put it down and straight out to you, and that's how it works.
Can I come back to you on that, Donna? Are you saying that you don't have first drafts, second drafts, third drafts?
Never. I don't edit at all. And that was something, because I am I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I must say I'm recovering very well. I drop the ball all day long now. It's so freeing. When I started writing a lot, I thought to myself, this is not going to be good for me. If I'm judging myself, and if I'm reading comments and taking it as a sort of taking it to heart, this is not going to be good for me. I'm too sensitive. I'm too, over emotional. So I made a sort of pact with myself that I would put the piece down as it arrived. I would spell check it, and I would put it out. And it would then go, and if anybody resonated with it, wonderful. If they didn't, I wouldn't take it personally. I would put it down to algorithm, or just nobody else who's on my wavelength today has seen it, because that's social media. So when it comes to doing my books, occasionally, and now that I'm with a publisher, sometimes the editing staff will suggest a change of a word or a change of a, and I will look at it and I will think, most of the time I will just say no, because that is the way that it came out, and that is the way that it goes out, and I don't really like it. I think once it's reviewed and edited, you're going to lose something that was quite special, that came from wherever your creativity comes from, and you can over edit so very quickly, and normally the part of your brain that's editing is the wrong part. It's not your creative part, it's the other part going, oh well, other writers do this, and oh well, maybe it should fit into this category, and I think that spoils it. But that's just my way of doing it, and it's not something that I have taught myself or learned. It's just something I decided for my mental health, really.
Wonderful. Your creativity leads me to ask Jo Davey now to ask her question about creativity. So over to you, Jo.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
I can hear you.
Lovely. Morning. Yeah, my question really probably relates into the mindfulness question, which was, how do you nourish your creativity?
I nourish my creativity by allowing myself to feel everything that I feel. I'm a really over emotional person, and I always have been. And I spent a lot of my life trying to hold that in, so that people would call me words I treasured at that time, like stoic and resilient, and oh, Donna, isn't she calm? These are words that have never been used to describe me, and I realized that it is not a bad thing to be the person that cries, to be the person that can't watch the news, to be the person that takes everything too much to heart. There is beauty in that as well. So I nourish my creativity by nourishing myself and allowing myself to be that flawed person, because as soon as I start doing that, everything flows. The minute I start trying to live up to something, that's when the blocks come in.
That's an amazing answer, and one I think we should all aspire to. Also think it's probably easier to speak about than actually implement in your life. You probably have to remind yourself daily on that. So talking about inspiration, Tina, you had a question as well as Lynn, the same question, but Tina, as I can see you, would you like to ask your question? Tina Playford? Unmute, darling. I don't think I can unmute you.
Right, that's better.
That's it.
Okay. Hello, Donna. Yes, I think my question was, what inspires you? Where do you get your inspiration from? Is it just something within you? Is it things that you observe, or is it a bit of everything that actually gives you the inspiration to write a particular poem?
Yeah, it's everything. So I can be standing next to someone and feel something that I feel might be coming from what they're going through in their life, or something that they have said, or someone will tell me a story about someone who's going through something, and there will be a poem automatically will come into my brain. or it can be something that's happening with the world. It can be a collective thing. It can be something that I'm going through in the way that I'm feeling that day. There are so many, there's nothing that doesn't inspire me, because even the worst things bring about, you know, beautiful thoughts once you process them. So I just listen, and more importantly than listening, I think it's feeling, because people don't always say what it is, but you can feel it from them if you absorb yourself. And even online you can do it. You know, you can put your whole self into that conversation and hear what they're not saying from their body language and on all of these things. So yeah, it's absolutely everything. It's humans, you know, it's humans and life. And I just think people are fascinating. I think people are wonderful, and I think I'm constantly trying to look for that, so that the negative things in the world don't send me under.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Donna, would this be a good moment for you to share a poem with us?
Yes,
perhaps why you've chosen it?
Well, to be honest, I went through my lost book and I picked the ones that everybody favours, because they're the most read ceremonies, and they're the most requested to print, and so on and so forth. So I thought it would be good to read those. Normally what I will do is I'll wait until I'm on, and then I'll get a feeling of what I want to read, depending on how the conversation's going or what people are saying or bringing. But I'm going to read this one because it is just one that I know brings a lot of comfort. I think from your point of view, I imagine being a celebrant, you're trying to bring as much comfort in a very short space of time to somebody who doesn't have a lot of availability to hear or feel, because they're already completely overwhelmed and numb. So I imagine that's a really difficult job. And then, of course, when you're doing other ceremonies, which actually I don't think about as much as I think about the loss ceremonies, that you have to, in another short space, sum up how, you know, these, whether it's a marriage or you said some other ceremonies there, which I've not even heard of before, new identity. And
yes, with gender affirmation, we were doing a naming ceremony for their new identity,
which I love. I'm definitely going to do something about that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, so this one is called Take Them With You. If someone you love did not make it on that trip, you can take it for them, with them. If someone you love did not witness that milestone, you can show them anytime you like. If someone you love did not get to do their living, you can finish those dreams on their behalf. The beautiful thing about love, you see, is that death need not stop life. If you carry someone in your heart, you can take them with you anywhere you like.
That's wonderful. Has anybody used that one in a ceremony?
That one is one of the most used. Oh, sorry, you meant you.
I was talking to the ICPC group. Has anybody? Yes, a few of us have used that already. And I recently sent it to a friend who's about to lose a close friend. So she was bereft before her friend had even died.
Yeah.
I was able to comfort her that way. So that's a beautiful one for us. Thank you.
And I thought about that when I was writing the book. I thought about people facing end of life, because I get a lot of people getting in touch with me saying, I would like to use this in my ceremony, and I would like to leave this. And obviously it's really hard to write about that, because you cannot help but imagine that's you and your children and, you know, everybody that you love. But I thought it was really important to put some of those in. I've tried to include a little bit of all aspects of grief, even the very first shock, some of the anger, because people do need to be understood as well, don't they? Comfort is all very well, but not everybody is comforted by comfort. It angers them because, you know, they want to scream and shout still. So I have tried to put all aspects of that. And I mean, it was tough to write. It was tough to write. I've still got my parents, and I write a lot about losing parents. And I've done that because my best friend went through it, and we grew up together. Her parents were second parents to me. And I literally took everything that she was feeling and put it into poetry that still, resonates now. But it's difficult to write things, when you have children and you've not lost children. It's very difficult to write about losing children. It was a hard write, but I hope that it's doing its job.
On that note, particularly, there's very little written about that, about losing a child. So it's a welcomed presence in a vacuum there. So
I think most people go like this, don't they? Because it's the unimaginable. You don't want to think about it. You want to be there for somebody, but the thought of that happening to you is beyond the pale. Your human brain and heart cannot cope with the thought of it, and so we shy away from it, and we just, but of course everybody wants to be heard and listened to, and that I think seeing themselves there is a big comfort.
Thank you. Can I ask Rebecca if she would like to ask one of her questions? I didn't know which one you particularly would want to ask, Rebecca. So.
No, absolutely. I had several. I didn't get writer's block at that point. I was just like, oh, lots of questions. I was thinking about the poem that you wrote, which is called When Someone Has Gone. I read that to our cohorts when we're doing the training, because when we're writing about somebody who has died, it's so easy just to write a CV. It's chronological. It's all of that. And so we talked to them about creating a hologram almost of the person who has died, so that we just bring them alive for people at the funerals. So that poem, When Someone Has Gone, is just so perfect for that part of our training. It really is about, feeling them again, seeing them again, telling their stories. So I wondered whether, and we do get writer's block quite a lot. Have you ever had writer's block, and what do you do in that instance?
I don't get writer's block because I write when I want to write. And I think if I had to write to a timeline, I probably would, because that's not how my writing works. And I think the only time I've sort of experienced it is when I was writing Love, because it was in the middle of the summer. I had some issues with my publisher, and my heart wasn't in it. And so halfway through Love, I didn't want to finish it. I didn't want to do the book. I didn't want to do any of the books. I got quite cross with the whole thing. So I had to sort of talk to myself and say, you've said you're going to do them, get them done, and they have to be authentic. So I had to think about Love, and I thought, nobody's going to buy this book straight away because it's called Love, because it's going to give ideas of romance specifically. And actually, love is everywhere. There are a million different kinds of love, and I wanted to sort of hammer home that fact. So that gave me the inspiration to try and touch on all aspects. How can you love in one day? How many different ways? You've so many different ways of loving, so many different people, and it is love. So as soon as I got myself a purpose, it all just flowed through. But I think if I had to do it to sort of timelines, and I would struggle. I know I would, because my creativity doesn't sort of work to other people's schedule, and I've never had to, which is such a wonderful thing. So sorry.
No, that's okay. I mean, I think because we do have to to a schedule, and but it's so, the books and the poems that you've written, I think, I mean, certainly for me, and certainly for a lot of other people, have given us that inspiration. And certainly that poem, when I read it in the training, people just go, well, yes, it just perfect. It makes sense.
Yeah. And I think sometimes you assume people will have heard everything. Actually, they haven't, because a lot of the time, as we said before, they're not listening. They're not feeling because they are feeling something else. So you sometimes think, well, I don't want to say that because you've probably heard it, but it just might be the right words at the right moment. So, it's better to keep giving as many words as you can, even if they might fall foul. Some of them will plant, and that growth is so strong, that seed that goes into the soil, can grow forevermore. So, yeah.
So that leads me nicely into the fact that you're talking about inspiration, and Mary has a question that she would like to ask.
Morning, Donna.
Hi, Mary.
Which writer inspired you in your writing to begin with, or was it a particular person that inspired you?
I don't actually know, because prior to writing poetry for the first time, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I did do it when I was a teenager, but as an adult, I didn't own a poetry book or particularly read poetry. I liked the little quotes that would fly around Facebook, because I'm somebody who, if I'm not in a great place, I don't want to sit down and read a whole book, even if it has the answer in it. I can't do it. I want short, snippets that will just start a process and, non-judgmentally. So I used to see these things flying around Facebook and think, wow, and then I started posting them on my page. And then I thought, well, I could write that. And, so I don't specifically remember. One name comes to mind, Nikita Gill, whose quotes would fly around. And then Rupi Kaur, I would see pieces and, yes, but I'm not particularly, hilariously, a lover of poetry.
That is strange.
I like to write it, but it's not something that I would seek out or read, which is, sometimes I think it's good, because I often worry that I will accidentally plagiarize, because I have one of those memories that takes things, and photographs them and keeps them. And so I don't want to be reading other people's work when I'm writing books, because that's bound to creep in, and it's bound to affect what I'm bringing. And I worry about that. So, yeah, I'm not sure about the inspiration, just people in general, the things that people say sometimes, they stick in my mind, and I think, well, there's a poem. Absolutely.
Thank you, my lovely. We talked a little bit about the pressure from your publishers.
Yes.
What that feeling felt like. And we were wondering, does the adoration of your readers, does that ever overwhelm you with a burden of responsibility?
Never, because I don't for a minute take it to heart. And that is not to say that I don't read the comments and take them all, as they have been written. The energy from the comments I will take, but the actual, I don't ever stop and think, look at all these people or anything like that, because that is when you start to, do it for all the wrong reasons. You can just as easily be revered and you can be despised in a day on social media. So I take each little comment and I read it, and I kind of imagine that person and what their life might be like and what that might have meant in their day. And I will sort of put it into a jigsaw of all the wonderful things that happen in life and the chain reaction of that and how that ripples out. But I don't take it to mean me, if that makes sense. I just take it to mean that little bit of energy was kick-started by me. And then that person shares it, and then they share it with other people. And everybody in that chain is just as responsible for spreading that inspiration as the person who started it off. Because if I sat here and wrote and nobody shared it or read it, there would be no inspiration. So I see it as a big machine rather than me. And I just really enjoy it. And the minute I started looking at it any differently, it would start to become too much of a pressure, I think.
Thank you. How you do that is incredible, I think. I think we're all being in awe of that very skill that you've got there. could I possibly ask you to read another poem? And could I say to my ICPC people, if you would like to ask a question, but you haven't given it to me yet, after this poem, if you just put the hand up and, excuse me, and we'll come to you.
So I had some bookmarks in my my book Loss, because, you know, obviously I immediately think of funerals and memorials and things like that, but obviously you guys are doing so much more than that, and you're being called to give. Would you like to hear something from Loss or Love?
Both, please.
Both. Okay, so I'm going to read just because it opened, and sometimes I take that as being, you know, somebody chose it other than me. Listen for the love. We don't always say, I love you. Sometimes we say, you're not eating very well, or should you be going out in this weather? We don't always say, you're amazing. Sometimes we say, I wish you would believe in yourself more. We don't always say, I love you. Sometimes we open our mouths and our hearts, which are actually full of love, pour out critically, nagging, berating, moaning, smothering. We can work on that. Sometimes love doesn't sound like I love you. Sometimes it sounds like eat more vegetables, be home by 9, don't work so hard. Listen for the love in everything you hear today. It doesn't always sound like it should, but it's there. It's definitely there.
That's beautiful. Absolutely. And I think there's humor in that too, isn't there? There's a lot of things that you think, yeah, when I love somebody, I nag them. If I'm not nagging them, it's because I don't care.
Absolutely. And it's so true. It's so true. But we do need to work on it, because sometimes, you know, a lot of people's regrets are in the, I wish I'd said, I wish I hadn't done that, and I wish I'd said more. So there's 2 ways to go about that. You can change what you say and let love come out looking like love, or you can always remember and remind each other that that is love, the nagging and the berating and the moaning. You know, it's just in a different guise.
Absolutely. Now, would anybody in the room like to ask a question? Yes, Beverly, go for it.
Hello there. Nice to speak with you, Donna. While you were talking, it made me consider, do you write your poems always in one hit? Or do you often start, not feel it, and then return to it, or edit, or not? We spoke about editing, have a different approach.
Yeah, I mean, mostly it's in one hit, but if I'm out and about and a line comes and I know that that line will unravel the rest, I'll pop it in my phone. And you've just reminded me, I put one in my phone yesterday, and I will read it to you just in case it becomes a poem. And you heard, I did it at the bonfire on Saturday night. And it's one line: I'll swap you a tear for a memory, dear. And that's it. And I know that that's a full poem. So when I go and I type that line out, the rest will just sort of come down like a blind. But mostly I write them in one piece. Rarely will I go and add more. But definitely there is always a line or a thought that starts it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for sharing that line as well. Exclusive. Sandy, you had a question.
Hello.
Hi, Sandy.
I'm just interested. I find each and every one of your poems has hope in it. They all seem to have, and I find that quite remarkable. And I wonder if you have like a drawer with all the ones that don't have, or whether that's a conscious decision, or how is that?
I don't have a drawer of poems that I've not shared, because I have a little rule that as soon as I write it, I share it. Even if it's for a book that I'm not supposed to share it for, I do it so far in advance that the publisher won't even know. Because until that poem has gone out and someone has read it, it's not alive. So I don't have a drawer full of poems that I haven't shared, because if I was to get halfway through a poem and felt it was too angry or too dark, I just wouldn't write it. hope is the only thing, you know, that we have. And sometimes there is nothing left but hope. And without hope, you know, you've just encouraged a huge amount of people to go lower. And whilst there's understanding in somebody's pain and they feel validated by you seeing it, you don't want to leave somebody. You wouldn't go and see a friend and tell them, oh my goodness, this is awful, and then leave. You would always leave when you felt like you had lifted them a little. You know, you wouldn't leave until that had happened. So it's the same with a poem. I'm not leaving until I've lifted you a little, even if it's just, you know, that tiny last line. Sometimes it's just the last line to leave you with that thought of, yes, this is horrible, but, you know, this is part of a bigger thing, and we must always search for the light. I'm such a searcher for light. My brain runs very dark. So I've had to teach myself to search for light throughout my whole life. Otherwise, I just, you know, become quite low.
That's an interesting, because celebrants have to protect themselves with their emotional welfare as well. So the very fact that you include that hopefulness and comfort actually helps us in our jobs, not just the people that we are celebrating or remembering.
Yeah.
Before we go to the next poem, perhaps Rebecca would like to come in with another one of her questions.
Hello again.
Hi, Rebecca.
Yeah, I think what you were saying about hope there really resonates. I mean, there are poems out there that I think of the one, which is the one, turn off the clocks and.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you should.
Bowden.
It's funny you should say that, because I was looking at it earlier. I love that poem, and I know you're probably going to say there is no hope in it, but I love that poem. I think that poem is absolutely amazing. Would I write it and send it out? No.
No.
Because it really does just say, you know, but something about that poem implies, even though there is no sort of, there's no flip to it. It literally just, you know, involves itself in the grief.
Yeah.
It's still something so beautiful about the way he describes the loss of someone that you love, and that pain that carries its own hope. And that, you know, the fact that you're so in grief, you know, is testament to the love. But then some people don't make that connection themselves. So I would not send that poem out.
No,
I love it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not your style, I guess. And it's I had it at my brother's funeral, and well, my sister-in-law did, and it was one, you know, I kind of felt, well, shoot me now, really. But but how do you think words, I mean, particularly those of hope, support us when we are conducting rituals such as funerals and naming ceremonies and weddings? Where do you think they play an important part?
I think you must have to run a huge part of what you do on instinct and what you pick up from the people that you are in company with or online with. You must be using a huge amount of your empathetic self, which is, you know, a part of us that we don't even know is there. And I would imagine that for you to see what your instincts are telling you written by someone else will give you that courage and validation to go, yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I felt these people could do with hearing. And so to see it in print, and for you to be able to look through and say, that's it, that's the one. I would imagine it gives you the backup that you're sort of the soul part of you that's working, you know, underneath the logic and the base emotions will give it the backup that it needs to say, yes, my instincts are telling me this is what you're going to need to hear, or this is what is going to work for that person. So that's what I would imagine it would bring for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It does give us something. Sometimes we do get sort of sucked into a bit of a black hole. So it is good to have the books there and the hope with which you speak in your poetry, as Sandy pointed out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Donna. Emma, you have your hand raised for a question.
Yeah, I guess I was curious how, I suppose, the whole publication, everything started, how you initially, when you first started, how you sent those words out there, and then how it came about that, you know, somebody thought actually these need to come together in a way that we can share with more people.
Yeah, it's totally the pandemic, because I had started writing poetry on my Facebook page anonymously under the name Ladies Pass It On, maybe for about a year sporadically, amidst articles and things like that. And then the pandemic came, and I, of course, immediately started writing about it. And I realised that people were coming to my page every day because we had nothing left. We only had words. You couldn't do it. There was nothing else. Words went right to the forefront. So I realised I was fulfilling a purpose, and that gave me purpose, gave me something to really focus on in the lockdown. And then I thought, one of my poems went viral in lockdown, and I thought, okay, I'm jumping on this now. I'm going to put the lockdown poems into a book. It will be a keepsake. It will be a memory. And if nobody buys it, I will have it, you know. I will have that book, because I'm going to forget how awful this time was and, you know, how I felt. So I very quickly put together a book in the July, thinking that lockdown was over. Ha 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 ha. And self-published it on Amazon, Kindle Direct, which was, you know, quite an easy thing to do. Anybody can do it. And then my followers did buy it. So after about a couple of months of sales, I thought, right, well, I'm going to take all the other poems that I've been building up, the real ones, not just about the pandemic, but the ones about being a woman at this stage in our lives, and I'm going to make that book too, before I lose my nerve. So I quickly put together To the Women. So To the Women came out only 3 or 4 months after my first book. And To the Women has now sold over 150,000 copies. It's only self-published. It's still self-published, and it still sells, you know, copies every single day, hundreds and hundreds of copies a week. So I've not edited it or gone back and done anything to it. So that's how it happened. And then I did the right words a few months later, and that's when I started to get attention and more followers. And that's when a publisher approached me, and that's how I became published, in a nutshell.
That is absolutely fascinating. And I think it would be encouraging to anybody here who has a writing skill to start and see what happens, because Donna didn't plan it. It just happened.
And you can publish on Amazon Kindle Direct without a penny spent. They don't print. They print when they're bought. So there is no wastage. There's no having to send books back. There is no, you know, there is no risk whatsoever. So I get hundreds of emails asking about how to do it. And I've got a little piece prepared that I copy and paste and send to these people, because I want everybody to know that there are these publishing houses that come and they will ask you for money and they will publish you. And that's great, because it will be a better looking book than the ones you can self-publish. They're a bit rubbish, but it doesn't matter if the words inside, you know, are what you want to put out there. The people will read it. So I'm always encouraging people to do it. Once you've got that physical book in your hand, your confidence and your ability to go on further, you know, if you wanted to do a book, you can buy 50 copies for yourself, and you can give it to people who, you know, who are grieving and or whatever. And you can make that happen. And then who knows what will happen with that book. I didn't plan it. It was entirely organic. I still look back now and say, well, I actually look back and realized a bigger plan was at work. But what I did do is I was brave, because it is hard. You worry, you know, there were mistakes in both of my books, and, you know, you're putting yourself out there. If you're brave enough to put a bit of you out there, I think the rewards are worth it, definitely.
Thank you. And would this be a good time for you to read us another poem?
Yes, I'm going to read one from Loss, I think. I'm not going to read the one that I have a bookmark in. I'm going to read this one. By the way, I can send you some lovely bookmarks if you like. They're very, they look great with the books. I know that it's not important, but they just really, aren't they nice? Okay. Yeah, so let me know and I can post them out. This one is called Where You Left Me. Don't expect me to be where you left me. I can't promise to wait for you there. I may not see the flowers you gave me, or the tears that will fall as you stare. I will be with the winds on the coastlines, embracing the mountains of snow. I'll be dancing around on the hillsides, lighting the fires that glow. I'll be flying with geese for the winter and welcoming lambs as they're born. I'll be singing with choirs in the theatre, free roaming without any form. Don't expect me to lie where you laid me. There is so much that I wish to do, but I promise with all of my heart that the first place I'll visit is you. I wrote that one because I have, it's wonderful if people want to come to your grave or your place of rest, but it's also worth remembering that for me, you can do that anywhere. You don't have to come to a physical space or place to think of someone or call them into you, and it's also to put that thought into people's minds that there could be wonderful things after, and that the person that you are missing might be experiencing bliss somewhere. And I think there's comfort in those thoughts, isn't there?
I'm glad you explained that, because I needed a moment then, because it actually in that one, doesn't it?
I struggle to read them a lot.
Yeah, especially if you start to visualize that person in the grave.
Karen is going. Bye, Karen.
Hi, Karen. Carrie Jenkins, Lost in Music.
I'm so sorry. I'll be listening as I'm walking to my appointment.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Carrie, you wanted to ask a question. You have to unmute, Carrie.
Yeah, that might help. Hello, Donna.
Hi, Carrie. I love your name, Lost in Music.
Oh, I know. Long story. You need another live to go over that one. Hello, everybody. Hello, Rebecca, who was my trainer a couple of weeks ago on the calls. And I'm going to apologise now. I hadn't even heard of you until I'd done this call. I know. Don't shoot me now. Don't shoot me. But now I'm a little bit obsessed.
Oh, there you go. Brilliant.
I know. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm becoming a bit like Rebecca, a bit like your second stalker here. I'm kind of loving it. And I don't know if you can see behind me, but I have The Life of Wham and I have 3 of your books.
Oh, wow.
I don't read. I'm not creative. I am creative in what I do for a living, but I'm not creative writing. When I've done the course, I know this is not a question, I'll be really quick, but when I've done the course, I've done 2 to 3 days, and I suddenly, my confidence hit rock bottom, and it was purely because I was surrounded by such beautiful people that had such beautiful creative words, and I've never ever been that way, and I suddenly had doubt in my ability. Now, the thing that got me out of that was Rebecca and Mike, who were training at the time, who read one of your poems, and it was called Light Up, I do believe. Oh, hold on, sorry.
All right.
Someone, for some strange reasons, trying to phone me. How inconvenient.
Happens.
Do they know who I'm speaking to, for God's sake? I don't know if it was aimed at me, but it just resonated with me and made me even more cryy than I was beforehand. The tears roll out, and I'd spent the next few days going, well, what's that poem? Who is that? I really love that. And I'm a bit obsessed now. So even the 2 that you've spoken today, does everybody here find them totally, they resonate with you? Because I just find, I lost my dad a year ago, 2 days ago, like 2 days ago, a year it was. And the first poem you read was about the travelling. Well, he left me his motorhome, and it's like, I know it sounds daft, but it just all resonates with me, and I just find that I've literally become a little bit obsessed with you now. So I do apologise if you do receive obsessive letters and things from me over the next few years.
I love it. You can't stalk me because I'm too willing.
Okay, I was going to say, because I'm a bit menopausal and a bit freaky, so I think I'm going to literally. But I've not got a question. I just wanted to say, that thank you very much for coming into my life. I really appreciate it. And I'm really enjoying today.
I think, when people do tell me, how it happens and how that, I mean, I don't see any of that. I don't see it. All I see is, you know, how many comments and how many shares, and I can fall into a trap of judging a poem on how many shares it's got, instead of judging it on how it, you know, it affected people's lives. So people have started telling me these little snippets, and they always apologize, saying you probably get loads of messages, and then I immediately write back and they're like and I'm having a conversation, because what could be better than that for me, than that sort of to and fro, and that's what it's all about. And the minute, you know, you hear how it happened, it has an impact on me and affects what I will write next and the quality of what I will write. And it stops me from falling into that trap, you know, of doing it for commercial reasons, which is something I'll have to be really careful for ongoing. So thank you.
Thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you. I think one of the things we'd all like to know, there's two bits actually. You said your first poem went viral, but you didn't give it a name. So we all want to know what that one was.
Yeah, it wasn't my first poem. It was just one of the ones that I wrote in the lockdown. I'm looking around to see if I have it, but I remember it actually. It's the only one that I really remember fully. It was History Will Remember When the World Stopped. And it went viral in America, and then it went viral in Britain, and it was made into many, many videos. Nurses and doctors and celebrities and songs. There are songs of it on YouTube, which was so bizarre. In fact, one of them I still can't get out of my mind. This guy put it to guitar and I loved it. Nobody else did, but I loved it. So that one, History Will Remember When the World Stopped. And I got a letter, well, I got a phone call from Amnesty International, and they said, please, could we send your poem to all of our subscribers across the world? And they printed it on the yellow card with the Amnesty International, and I was just like, what is this? So that was, you know, insane. That was what gave me the confidence to go, right, I'm doing a book.
That is incredible. What an accolade to that. And we're all going to go immediately from here and go and read that poem, aren't we?
Well, it's recited by Charlie Sheen, and all the sort of very famous Welsh people did a version of it. It's on YouTube. It's beautifully done. He opened up the first line and nobody told me. And someone tagged me in it. Can you imagine? And I opened up my phone, and Michael Sheen, not Charlie Sheen, that's quite a difference. Michael Sheen said, history will remember when the world stopped. And I just went and melted into a puddle. He did it so beautifully. So yeah, you can watch that. It's stunning.
Thank you. We will. What I was wondering is that you have developed this far through unusual circumstances, and mine is a two-part question really. Firstly, do you think if the pandemic hadn't happened, you would still be a published poet? I'll do that one first. Would you still have gone there, or do you think it's solely down to the pandemic?
I think I was heading that way, because what I had done is I had unleashed a part of myself. I wrote a few pieces that went quite viral before the lockdown. One of them was called It's Time, somewhere in the middle of every woman's life, Mother Nature has that one. And then When You Say Goodbye to a Parent, what I wrote when my friend's mum died. And my mum said to me, you know, it's awful when you lose your last parent because you're an orphan. And I immediately thought, and I just went to the airport, because I was with her mum when she died, with Lynn and her mum, and I wrote that in the airport. So they had gone viral as over 100,000 shares, but I didn't really have my name on them at that stage because I was still a bit embarrassed. So I think I was heading that way. Would I have had the time or the brain space to? I don't think I would have. I don't think I would have. I think I might have got there. I might have limped along for a few years and eventually made a book. But it was definitely the pandemic that was the catalyst for the whole thing. And people were ready for me. They needed me. You know, they had nothing else they only had online. We only had online. So we all went there every day going, what's going to get me through to another day of this? And so I really responded to that need, you know, and it gave me such purpose. So I don't think I would have.
That's very interesting, isn't it? So what the good things that came out of the pandemic?
Definitely.
Before I come to my next bit of question, Lynn, you've got your hands raised. Would you like to ask your question, Lynn?
Yeah, hello. So I took a service in the summer for a young woman, and she had a young baby as well. And I used one of your poems, and it was probably one of the hardest jobs that I've had to do as a celebrant. But what the poem was, "Don't miss me more than once a day."
Yeah.
And it really fitted with a partner. He liked it. And I just wanted to ask you, how do you feel about your work being spoken at funeral services? How do you know, is it?
It's the best part of the whole thing. And it's an unequivocal yes to anybody who wants to read it, print it, whatever you want to do with it. It's, you know, that is the whole point. That's what they're alive. These poems are for. That is their purpose, their job. You know, if they're not doing that, then what is the point of doing it? So it is the biggest honour, accolade. It's the most positive part of what I'm doing at the moment, is how celebrants are taking my words and using them, and other people privately, and using them at the most important moments. Well, what could be better than that for a writer to be chosen to represent a moment in time that will only ever happen, you know?
I can tell you for a fact that it did bring comfort to the family. It really did. And as soon as when I read it at the family arrangement meeting, everyone was in tears, and they said, "Yeah, we want that at the service." So it was amazing.
Yeah, and that's a really old one. It's in my new book, but it's also in my very
this one.
Yeah, it's in my first book. That's right. And that came around a conversation with my dad saying to me that if I die of COVID, and he says these things to me to wind me up, because I can so very easily cry. He does it deliberately, and then he gives me a great big cuddle, and you know, he thinks it's hilariously funny. And he said, but seriously, do not spend, you know, any part of your day. I will allow you one part of the day. And I just thought, you know,
that was the inspiration for that poem.
Such a thing that you would want to tell your loved ones is absolutely miss me. You're going to miss me. Of course you're going to miss me. No point saying don't do it, but try. And, you know, everything else should be positive. The sad missing me, you're allowed one a day. And then the rest, try and turn it positive. Try and find a thing that you love that was, you know, you can do for me, that kind of thing. So that was the message behind that, is yes, you can be sad, but just keep it to the minimum. Try and keep the joy higher.
Thank you.
And well done, Lynn, for reading that in such difficult circumstances. Yeah. I would imagine your thumbs were well pinched, or whatever it is you do to control your emotions.
I've actually realised that when I'm doing a service, because the whole thing about not fidgeting at the lectern is I clench every part of my body.
Oh, I would have to do that
for 20 minutes or 30 minutes.
Like
this. I don't know, but it's really great because it's toned me up.
Well, advice. I'll try that next time I have to speak.
Top tips from Lynn Knox.
Yeah. Weird but top.
Yeah.
You could come up with a workout, the celebrant workout.
Just put that idea in Rebecca's head. She'll have us all doing it.
To the Macarena.
Yeah, to the Macarena. Anna, would you like to ask your question? Unmute, Anna.
That little microphone at the bottom, probably, Anna. You need to click on that little microphone.
I've done it for you.
Yeah, great.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Donna.
Hi, Anna.
This question comes from a funeral I did last week, actually, which at the very end, the person that died, his favourite companion was actually a big bull terrier who was at the funeral. And in the big swelling music at the end, he broke from his lead, ran through the chapel, and then to the coffin. It was like, whoa! It was amazing, actually. But anyway, so it made me think of this question. Have you ever written any poems about people or things that will miss the person that's died, but can't actually articulate it, or they're inanimate, such as dogs, babies, maybe someone's award-winning garden or their piano that they used to play, so that the poem comes from the place of the person that can't actually speak?
No, never. And obviously I've written poems about the loss of pets. Most of the poems that I write about loss will say, you know, my possessions, you know, do what you want with them, because, you know, my love is in them. But if it's not bringing you comfort, or it's not going to continue, that's fine, because I'm no longer in that possession. I'm now in you. So it's never occurred to me, in all honesty. And the minute you said about the pet, well, that really tugged at my heartstrings, because that thought is awful. That pet can't, you know, oh gosh, it makes me cry just thinking about it. I don't know. Yeah, watch the space, Anna. I might have to do that. It's a great question. I've never thought about it. It's never come to me before.
I think there's something in there. I too have experienced it, where there were 5 dogs in one household, and the gentleman died in his front room, and his wife allowed the dogs to just smell him and realise that he'd gone. And I think that helped her grieve, because the dogs knew he'd gone and they weren't always then looking for him.
I mean, it really was quite amazing, because it was at this he recognized the music that was playing.
Yeah.
It was, and started howling. You could see him twitching, and then barking, and then he just went.
Goodness, powerful.
It was wonderful, actually.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. But also, you know, I can't watch those videos when you see the pets, you know, looking at the videos, the photographs of their owners. It's just heartbreaking, isn't it? Yeah, you're right. That is that's probably something that people are dealing with a lot.
But I just wish, you know, in hindsight, because I didn't know that was going to happen, but it would have been lovely to have had something to have read that was from the point of view of the dog.
Yeah, that would have been beautiful, because the dogs mean so much to us. I've got 2, and they are, you know, there is no difference in the love that I have for them, except for you worry about the fact that they can't communicate. You always worry about what your dogs are thinking, don't you? And they can't tell you. So yeah, it would be very sad to watch your beloved pet grieve for a partner.
Or even something like, because I mean, I'm a pianist. My piano's over there. There it is. And my piano will miss me.
Yeah. Oh. Well, there's a title for a poem if I've ever heard one.
Yeah.
My piano will miss me.
I'm conscious that we're coming to the end of our time, but I'd like to ask you one last question, and then hope that you might leave us with a poem.
Absolutely.
What's next for you, Donna? How do you see your writing career developing?
Well, I am extremely happy with everything as it is. I'm so enjoying. Occasionally I get to travel down to London and do a little TV or radio. That's really exciting. I don't want it to be something that I do all the time or anything like that. I live in Scotland. This is my little office that I love. I will just keep, the books are already written, the new books. There are 4. But I think I've got 7 at the moment. So I think that's plenty in circulation for the moment. So I'm just going to keep doing what I enjoy, hopefully get a bit more confident with speaking and, you know, things like that. And because that's the bit I struggle with. I get really dry mouth. Do any of you get dry mouth? Do any of you suffer with nerves? It's a real tricky one for me, because my lip sticks to my teeth. And that's not great when you're reading poetry. It's not a good look. It worked for Elvis, doesn't work for me. Water doesn't seem to help. It's like I just absorb the moisture. So, you know, I want to work on things like that. But I've got 2 kids, and I love being at home, and I love being able to do things that I choose to do. And I don't want to get too far into a larger machine that I'm not particularly in control of. So I'm really happy with the way things are.
Excellent. But if you ever do write a novel that incorporates love.
Well, I do have a novel. Yes, I do have a novel, and it will be getting published at some point in the next couple of years, timeline dependent. And who's that lovely doggy? And it's based on poetry and witches, and not witches specifically, but that's all I can say at the moment. But yeah, I do have that. But it's about how words travel and what the words do as they travel through different lives, the same words. And it's based on obviously what I've seen a particular poem do and how that affects each life that it touches.
I
So
already love it. Of words, the power of words for good and evil, really.
yeah, it's called The Travelling Book. So you heard it here first.
Would you be kind enough to leave us with one last poem?
I will. And I think I'm not going to read the one that's the most popular one, because I'm sure you've all read it and heard it. I'm going to read the one that opened up, because that's, again, how I like to do it sometimes. And this one is called Great Grief, which is not easy to say with a Scottish accent. Great grief. Don't fall out of love with this world because they no longer live in it. Instead, be grateful that this world produced them. Be glad that this life ever existed and that you were blessed enough to love them then and love them still. Don't fall out of love with this world because it could not keep your heart whole. Instead, let love be the glue. Patch it up and fill it with joy. Joy that you know firsthand in this bittersweet conundrum, that great grief is born only of great love.
That was beautiful. And I think with mental health issues, that actually would be very poignant. Amanda, sorry, we're almost out of time. Is yours a quick question, Amanda?
Yes, it is. Yes. Hi, Donna.
Hi,
thank you for this session. You are a global sensation.
Oh.
I'm not completely familiar with your work, but in the few services that I've done as a funeral celebrant, death is still such a very much a taboo subject. Can I ask, does any of your work focus on breaking down that taboo to normalize death for most people?
I think a lot of it does, because I'm a big believer in talking about anything takes away the darkness. You know, things can sit in darkness until you switch the light on, and talking is the quickest way to switch the light on. And I think one of the poems is How to Talk to the Grieving, and it's one of the first poems in the book, because I think that is where people struggle. I'll say the wrong words, you know, and you can't say the wrong words as long as you don't say move on, you know, or there are very few things that you can say that are wrong. And if you let your soul do the talking, or don't even talk, just hold or show up, leave, come back, whatever, you know, it's about, don't just stay away because you're worried you'll say the wrong thing. You know, we have to work at that. We have to get better at that. People might be angry, but you can cope with that little bit of anger in their time of need. You know, you can take that. You're big enough and strong enough, because that will have done them some good in that moment as well, to get a little bit of that anger out. You know, there is no wrong way of dealing with. So I think the book does very much encourage people who are at end of life and people who are on the other side of that to look at every aspect and talk about it. And feel okay that, you know, you're going to feel like this. It's all right to be numb for a few months. It's all right to not be able to let go. It's all right as long as you're constantly trying and constantly, you know, putting the effort in to save your life that's left, because you know that that's what they would want. But not saying it in that way, you know, oh, they wouldn't want you to be sad, because that can be, you know, the most annoying thing to hear at that moment. So yeah, I think so. I think just writing a book, my publisher said, oh, do we really want to publish a book called Loss at Christmas? And I said, I can assure you it will be the one that sells the most. And it is, because it's all in one place. You can hand it over. If you've not got the words, you can say, I take this, you know, I love you and I really want you to have some words that will help. And or you can pick it up and open a page, and that's all you can cope with that day. So I saw a huge need for something simple and modern that people can access. That you don't have a lot of time in that space between death and being laid to rest, and you are not in your bones. You know, one of my poems is, you know, forgive me, I am not home, I do not live inside my bones, because you're not there, are you? You're somewhere else, searching for the one you lost. So yeah, I hope that this book will get a ball rolling as well for other writers to do the same.
Thank you.
I think you've helped us all today individually and as a collective, as a profession, and we will continue to support your work.
And I'm very grateful. I'm so grateful. It really makes a huge difference, knowing that, you know, there are people, professional people as well, who are using this in a professional capacity to do such wonderful things. It's just magnificent for me as a writer.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your time and sharing not just your poems, but your whole philosophy of life. So yeah, a big thank you from everybody here. It's been amazing.
Oh, I've loved it. Thank you so much. Do invite me again.
We will.
Okay. Have a great
I'm going to stop recording now and say goodbye to everybody who has joined us. Thank you for coming, everybody.